you're in this investigative journey, encountering obstacles along the way. How do you deal with that? So I was sold on the team building and aspects of the game right away. And you build good friendships and relationships. All the guys that were in our group, wonderful guys, and enjoy getting to know all of them. And then also the creative, I don't know how to categorize this, but you get to kind of be a kid again in a sense, and explore your creativity and explore your imagination.
Leap into the fray with your Warhammer. Ah!
Hello, everyone. Over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to participate in a Dungeons and Dragons group. That's right, me, a pastor in a Dungeons and Dragons group. And in this interview, I'm talking with our game master or dungeon master, DM, about that experience. And also we're together exploring the controversies surrounding D&D, especially in the Christian community. So I hope you'll enjoy this interview.
So, Pastor Brian.
Great to be with you again, Ron.
Yeah, missed you.
I know. It's been a while since I've been able to regularly D&D with you guys.
Yeah. My first advice to anyone watching this is don't ask a pastor to play.
Yeah, we do tend to be kind of busy at times, but it's nice, as my wife would say, let our hair down and have some fun. And so I appreciate you opening up your august body to include me from time to time.
Well, yeah, and then of course maybe once a month we'll do that one-off thing or one shots. That's what. But so yeah, Pastor Chris contacted me out of the blue. He discerned that I was a Christian or something. I don't know, but he wanted me to DM his family or something, and I was like, who's this dude? That's kind of weird. But then I just started thinking about, oh man, I got some pastors to play D&D, and especially people who've never played D&D. But boy, was that hard to find pastors.
Yeah.
Especially, it's funny. It's like I go to this big church, and I was not about to ask any of them to do it. Or I asked one, and he was like, "Is that a video game or what is that?" He didn't even have a clue. And I was like, I'm not gonna walk around here.
I can't see the pastor of your church being part of a D&D group, but
we got like 100 pastors walking around, the seminary, but I'm not going to walk around accosting you want to play D&D? You want to play? I'm just not going to do that. I'm just mind my own business and be the sheep walking around and then get out, But so I found you through really searching or Twitter or whatever, and then saw your fantasy book site, and then was like, well, he might be interested. That's how I contacted you. So, and I knew you before I accosted you online, stalked you online. I knew you were questioning D&D, right? Or role-playing games and witchcraft and the influence of that on Christians.
Yeah, so I think I had wrote an article on that, and that's when you reached out to me shortly after that. And so I'm very glad that you did. But yeah, I grew up, I went to a private Christian school, very, very fundamentalist, theologically conservative. And I remember a friend, I was in like the 4th or 5th grade, a friend of mine brought in D&D. And so we started playing it at lunchtime, D&D, and we played it over a few lunch breaks. And then the teachers found out about it, and that was shut down. So, in the conservative Christian circles that I grew up in, Dungeons and Dragons was seen as witchcraft and a total violation of Leviticus commandments, Deuteronomy commandments on consorting with witches and so forth. And so it was it was seen as demonic, and that's the environment that I grew up in, and D&D was bad, and it's a shame. A lot of Christians are still kind of in that camp because they don't make a distinction between what's real and what's imaginary.
And also the distinction is, D&D once was something neutral, and now the owners of it are turning woke or whatever. Everything's going woke.
Yeah.
So there is this RPG thing that's neutral, or the old D&D is very neutral as far as what people believe and stuff. And that's kind of what we're referring to, and not the new D&D, which obviously they're turning it into a woke thing, which is fine. That's what they want to do with it, fine. But I'm not going to go.
It's kind of like my dad and I we're both enthusiasts of sci-fi and fantasy and stuff. We love Star Wars and Star Trek and all that. And we used to make games together. We'd create games together, and we at one point we'd be playing the game and developing the rules as we're playing it. A lot of times it was a fun thing that we did. And so at one point we had this war game going. Do you remember the old game Feudal by chance? Do you remember that? It's an old board game. Does that ring a bell?
If I saw the cover, maybe I don't.
But
I did a few, but I didn't go that far into board games.
Well, we can
those kind of boards
from Feudal, and we created our own game board and our own stuff, and
yeah.
And then we added in dragons, and then we added in a wizard to control the dragons and stuff. And Dad and I were both Bible believing Christians. He's passed away now; he's with the Lord. But we didn't see anything at all sinful about that. It was just fun. I think a lot of times Christians feel like, and you can compromise your convictions when it comes to entertainment. Like, for example, I don't think Christians should consort with pornography and so forth, but that's where the intent of the entertainment medium in that case is to lead you into sin, but that is not the case with role-playing games. With role-playing games, it's like you just kind of suspend your whole sense of reality and you're just enjoying it. It's like, and if it's a sin to play a role-playing game, then it's also a sin to watch Star Trek or Star Wars or Superman,
Lord of the Rings,
Batman, or Lord of the Rings,
or even Chronicles of Narnia, because there's a witch there and Santa Claus.
Well, the church I pastored before I pastored the current one, I pastored in Ohio for 3 years. We rented a television, big screen TV, brought it in, and we showed The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And the guy that dropped the TV off, I said, I got to ask you a question. You're a church, and yet you're showing a movie about fantasy movie. What's with that? Aren't you Christians against Harry Potter and everything? And so it was very interesting. So we have a reputation out there as being oftentimes, if it's fun, we're against
liberal.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah, the being
conservative Christians have a reputation of being against anything that's fun, and if you
we are against anything that's fun.
Yeah. and I am probably seen as a liberal because I'm open to that. But I think when you made a distinction that's a very important. There are some D&D games I would not be a part of, and there's some. It all comes down really to the DM. For those of you that are
and the players, the
dungeon master or the leader of that group in collaboration with those players. They kind of set the tone and they set the parameters, and they form their own culture in that game. And so,
right.
So there's and in the group that you and I were in, or that you led and I was part of, it was all Christians, and so we all
had a hard time, had a terrible time.
Yeah, it was so unfun, but we knew where we could play safely within the confines of what the Bible would consider appropriate, and then we knew we're not to step out of that. So, and we had a great time. So,
yeah, and the whole aspect of like many gods and stuff, going there.
Yeah,
it's just, I mean, it's just storytelling, and then I don't particularly care to do all that stuff, and I prefer making the gods part of the demonic. The field of demons that are trying to influence people anyway. And if there are good gods, I would consider them to be more like angels or a message, in the world where someone hasn't gotten the word or the word isn't there. So this is as far as me creating a fantasy element out of it. But I try to stay away from that mostly and just do more, on what's going on in the ground.
And most of your viewers, I know, are very familiar with what you're talking about, but some of mine might be a little bit confused by what you're saying there. So for those that are uninitiated to Dungeons and Dragons, if you get into
or any fantasy,
if you get into the lore, then basically you're dealing with an alternate world, alternate universe, usually set in a fantasy medieval setting, but not always, because you're role playing. I understand a Star Wars game right now, so it's not always medieval, but
it could be Running a church role-playing game.
It could be. You
totally make a role,
RPG mechanics could be applied to any
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
And there's demons,
Yeah. But if you in the traditional Dungeons and Dragons
fantasy, the first one, so
realm,
it's a tradition.
You're dealing with wizards and witches and gods, small g, and things like that. And so I do understand, and I think we need to be fair, that some Christians who may not have been exposed to that realm, that world, who understand what's going on, might be queasy about that, because the Bible does condemn witchcraft and sorcery and say that we should stay away from it. But like you, and we've talked about this before, I see a big difference between King Saul going to the Witch of Endor and me turning on the TV and watching a rerun of I Dream of Jeannie. Right. It's just not in the same ballpark at all, So when you are playing a fantasy game or watching a fantasy movie or a television program or whatever, and this is make-believe, this is imagination, this is not real, this is just entertainment, then for me anyway, I'm able to just know that, detach, go into it. And in the same way that when I watch a war movie or when I watch Russell Crowe and Gladiator, this is not real. This is make-believe. And that matters, So, but a lot of people aren't able to make those distinctions, and so I go to where Paul talks about the meat being offered to idols, and so I look at it like it comes down to your heart and not causing others to stumble. So if anyone is watching this and you're not at all comfortable with role playing in a Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy universe, then neither Ron nor I are saying that you must do that. I mean, obviously, follow your conscience, but it does bother me when I see Christians and pastors and so forth kind of make a across the board declaration without taking into consideration all the facts.
Yeah, we are. I know God gave us this desire and gift to be storytellers.
Yes,
we want to tell stories. Role playing is just one tool or medium to do that. You can do it by writing books. You can do it by having plays. You can do it by reenacting Bible stories. But we want to tell stories that help each other in our growth with the Lord and in our growth with each other, fellowshipping. And role-playing games is exactly what can provide that medium. It's fun. It's silly. You can make it serious. You can make it grim. You can make it test your own morals. You can
and this is
whether it's a fantasy or reality, as close to reality as you can get it.
This is a passion point for me, and I'm sure it is for you too, that some people will hear what you just said and respond with, well, that's fine, tell stories, and they'll point to, why don't you watch the Hallmark Channel? And
but they're telling stories.
They are telling
they're telling stories that we watch.
That's what I'm saying. It's like some Christians will say it's okay if you tell stories in this genre, but not in this genre. And now my wife,
and it's still fantasy too. The Hallmark stories are still fantasy.
Yeah, big time.
It's fantasy. They're wearing modern clothes, but it's still fantasy.
My wife enjoys the Hallmark Channel, and so I have to be a good husband and watch some of those movies with her. And she and I both agree this is definitely fantasy, but it's generally clean fantasy, and that's great. And there's a lot of Christian things out there. You watch Pure Flicks and so forth, and there's a lot of clean stories out there. But I think all Christians need to recognize that not all tastes are the same. And some people are going to enjoy drama. Some people are going to enjoy comedy. Some people are going to enjoy, old black and white movies. I like Jimmy Stewart movies and stuff. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is one of my favorite all-time movies. But some Christians, like myself, and I'm sure like you, also enjoy action, adventure, fantasy type entertainment where you've got, wizards and all that in there, and dragons, and we enjoy that. And I think there's a place for that in people's entertainment toolbox, if I could say it that way. So,
yeah, role-playing games too gives it breaks down the power structure of Hollywood, so that now the families create their own stories
Yeah.
and have an incredibly entertaining time without Hollywood, without they can create their own worlds, their own setting. It can be a Christian setting easily. Any role playing game can be a Christian setting. The problem is that since Christians are staying away from it, we're not getting those settings. The woke and the pagans or whatever, the secularists, the humanists are creating a bunch of role playing games. Whether it's science fiction, cyber,
Yeah.
what's it called? Cyber, whatever near future stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Apocalypse, whatever, horror. But the Christians are like, no. We all obviously have tons of Christian books out there, tons of Christian books out there. Why aren't we having tons of Christian role playing games? It's the same thing. You're sitting there writing a story premise or element that then people can play. They can create their own little scenarios in that RPG game that you have created. And I'm kind of bummed that there's only like 2 out there, maybe, and neither are active, very active.
Well,
and it's just,
I'm with you. I think.
So I am working on my own, just so you know.
and I do want to talk about your game in a second, actually, because I think the viewers would be interested in that. But to lead into that conceptually, you and I have talked about this before, but I think that just as there are companies out there who sell kits for Vacation Bible School or kits and videos for small group Bible studies and things like that, I think there could be a market for kits for youth groups or even kids groups with Christian themed role-playing games,
Exactly.
Where this could really help churches grow. It could help churches, it could help parents connect with their children better and things like that. But there needs to be money behind that and some enthusiasm behind that on the part of the Christian community. I say that loosely speaking, and at least in America, and I'll focus on America right now, but this is probably the case in just about any country in the world. But we're not. It just seems like, I know not everyone's a hypocrite, in a sense, but it seems like there's this inconsistency and this cognitive dissonance going on in the Christian community, and it frustrates me. On the one hand, Christians, when they're in church, will have a tendency to want to condemn anything that has a wizard in it or anything that has any supernatural power element to it or fantasy element. They'll want to condemn it and stay away from it. But then they leave the church and they go home. They'll turn the television on and they'll watch all kinds of secular entertainment in many cases, with all kinds of material in it,
And they don't, and then those people control what you see.
Exactly.
What you experience, not what you don't get to control it.
Exactly.
In a role playing game, you get to control it. You get to set that bar for you and your family, or for the kids around that are playing it.
But to continue with that traditional approach that I just described, we're in a losing culture war in that case, because what we're doing is we're trying to draw these boundaries around the Christian church, and in some cases the Christian family. Oh, we're not going to have anything to do with Star Wars or anything like Star Wars or D&D or anything like D&D when we have our church hat on, our Christian hat on, so to speak. But then when I get together with my friends, or when there's a party with my kids or whatever, and there happens to be, or when I just want to watch TV at home, watch Netflix or whatever, subscribe to Netflix, we're supporting the very things that we are uncomfortable with. And you're right, we lose all control of the culture in that case. And I just interviewed an author, Christian author named Brian Gadawa, and he has written you'd actually like him, you'd like to meet him. He has written a Christian fantasy series set in biblical times. But what he does is he takes what the Bible says about the false gods, and he uses his creative imagination, intensifies it, and it's really, so he just wrote a book called Moses Against the Gods of Egypt, and he talks about the plagues and everything, and what was really going on in the spiritual realm. And so there's a lot of creative license and imagination that he uses, but it's pretty consistent. I think it doesn't contradict the Bible. It just kind of adds some color to it. But he's written a whole fantasy series on that, the Chronicles of the Nephilim, so he talks about the sons of God, and the giants and all that. And I mean, it's action packed, and it's the kind of stuff that, honestly, we need to get more boys reading. And so it's the kind of thing that Christian young, I'm not trying to stereotype here, but generally speaking, girls are much better readers than boys. And we need to get more of our boys reading. This is the kind of stuff that boys would probably get into and really enjoy. You've written some neat stuff. Fiction set in a zombie apocalypse. I read your first book on that. It's pretty fun and entertaining. And then
you did?
I did. And then actually, just can you pause for a second? Tell the listeners about your book. It's Night of the Living Dead, right? Is that what it was called? Night of the
Dead. But it's K.
With the K.
It's the night. The night. The medieval night. Okay, so it's based in here in Hollywood for some reason, and basically a guy with medieval armor, modern day, and there's a zombie apocalypse, and of course he has a family, and he realizes that the armor is the best way to fight these things, so he puts that on, and it's there's a lot going on there. I start from chapter, sentence 1, chapter 1. I start the zombie apocalypse, and I just based it on around here and knowing what I know.
And it's entertaining, and it's a great one of the coolest concepts that I have seen in a I need to post an Amazon review. Sorry about that. I'll do that. But it's one of the coolest concepts that I've seen
For a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, because it's like, who thinks about that? Put modern day, but dressing up,
reenactor guy, not reenactor, but medieval combat.
And you've done that.
Sport.
You've done the medieval combat stuff yourself.
Yeah, so I know what it's all about. I know what it. So I'm trying to write it from almost a POV as far as the fighting and what I think would happen.
And it's a believable that a person who can dress up in armor like that would be a formidable force in such a scenario. So it's very believable. So it's enjoyable.
I read it. I tried to write too that he was very, the exhaustion, pain, the difficulty of it all as well.
Swinging that sword around in that heavy armor, he's going to get pretty tired, and so you've experienced that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I do love the series, but it's just I didn't get that many readers, and it's kind of it's. The guy's very Christian in it. He's a very self-bloated Christian in it. So, obviously, in a very apocalyptic, extreme, feedback. So he's going to get even more Christian. More crazy Christian.
And you also wrote a series for kids that because obviously the night of the dead is
adult.
More
sure,
adult.
Sure.
And it's pretty violent stuff.
13 and above. I think a mature 13-year-old could read it, but maybe 16 or above.
You wrote a series for kids, and
Alfred,
you sent me a book on that. I still got to read that. I'm sorry. I did give it to my youth pastor, and then our youth pastor quit. I don't think it's because of your book, but
maybe.
And he went.
He saw you as sacrilegious or something. giving him that book.
And so he went to Florida, but tell us.
Oh, Florida! Now I know why he quit. Florida. No, so I did Alfred, the Boy Would Be King series, and that's a fantasy, very much like Harry Potter, and Lord of the Rings. And I did want to do it as a replacement for them as far as Christian morality or ethics. And Alfred is not a believer, but it's going to go, because he just doesn't know, hasn't been experienced that. But anyway, it's he's a modern day kid, like a Yankee in King Arthur's court. He goes to a fantasy world and ends up helping.
And you did another series that
the dungeons, like just a traditional Dungeons and Dragons type
series,
short pulp little novelettes that I just was writing.
So but this is an example. You've contributed to the fantasy genre yourself as a writer, and there are other Christian authors out there that have done this, and they've written some good books. But like you, I'm kind of mystified and frustrated at why we haven't seen that transition to more popular media, especially for
RPG is becoming a very popular hobby, game, and media, because so many people like myself are YouTubing their sessions. Many are doing it way better than I am, but I'm slowly just practicing to get better, hopefully with players and all that. And my goal, first, my goal in it was watching it back myself, because I don't know if it's a narcissism, but I do enjoy listening to, like, I kind of podcast my series back at me while I'm doing things around the house. And I'm very amused, and then having the chance to critique myself. But again, I want it to be like, I when I searched out people that role play on YouTube, I didn't, the material was a bit, like the swearing and the blasphemy just wasn't my thing, and some of the content wasn't my thing either. So yeah, I just wanted to create it for me, or someone like me who just wants more of a fun, guffawing, crazy dad jokes, but PG-13 and family friendly. So.
Well, and I'll speak to the group that I was a part of. I guess I'm still kind of.
The whole point of this interview was to ask your first impressions and experience. So let's so a few minutes into this interview, let's get to that. Finally. So your first impressions coming. Wow, I'm going to edit out 40 minutes. Your first impressions here, playing D&D with this group, with all that we've just discussed. What happened there?
So I have a like I said, my only experience with D&D up until
you already said it. Go ahead.
I met you was elementary kid. Yeah, and then my daughter, who's also she's loves fantasy and history and reading. She's very similar in taste. Kept talking about we should try it, and I was like, well, I don't know. And to be honest with you, part of my reservation was I'm not sure the people in the church I serve as pastor are going to approve of it. If their pastor's playing D&D, what's that gonna do? But after talking to you, I got comfortable, and I was like, okay, so it really comes down to the universe that's created by the game master, or dungeon master as they call it, and the collaborative arrangement of those players and stuff. And so when we so my first impression was, it's a little bit of apprehension, because more about what are people going to think than because I trust myself, and I know where I am with the Lord, and I know what lines that I shouldn't cross, kind of thing. But what are people going to think, kind of thing. That was my first fear, but you helped allay that, and then we got into it, and
I tricked you.
You tricked me. Yes, you did. And so we got into it, and it was it was I gotta admit, I started to nerd out. I started to geek out. It's like this is fun. It's like you helped streamline the on-ramp, so to speak, because I can see that there's a lot involved about developing and creating your character, and then jumping into the world and stuff. So you helped streamline that.
My advice is, when you have a new player, don't let them do it. Give them a character, give them a background, knowing based on their personality or what, and don't even explain the game. Just start playing, and then tell them when to roll and what to roll. Because if you try to explain the game, you zombie them out. If you try to start with the background and creating a character, you zombie them out. They don't know what to do. Well, so this is just for first-time players, Then, Brian, if you ever played again, you like, I'm going to make my own character and my own back, because then you will do it. But that first time, you don't want to do that with a player.
No, and it was good advice, and I generally followed it. But I started to nerd out and geek out so much, and you were giving us just a little bit of information, understandably so, and but I'm like, I want more, And so I started to watch some videos on YouTube about creating characters and different, and then I'm like, it was overwhelming, So I'm like, okay, I see the wisdom of what Ron was doing. So I started to behave myself again, just follow what Ron says. But you knew me a little bit at that point, so you were like you're a cleric, and I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. And then we agreed that we talk about the false gods thing. That I was not going to worship a false god. I was going to worship the one true God. And so we didn't make it like overtly Christian, but we just sort of hinted at that and implied that.
Well, even in paganism, there's this whole concept of there's a father out there somewhere. There's a father,
Yeah.
They're denying whatever, but there's always that weirdness in their heart that there is a father.
Well, and I was
which is in the Bible, but
motivated. I was motivated by Paul's speech at Mars Hill because I was speech sermon.
The unknown.
He's like, to the unknown God, and I was like, that's kind of what I was kind of going for. But I was able to play with a clear conscience. I mean, I enjoyed it immensely. And one of the cool things about, well, I'd say there's two things about D&D that struck me that I really, again, this is if you're playing in a safe group, if you're playing in a group, and I don't use the word safe in a woke liberal sense. I use it in a
fellowship or discernment.
Yeah. If you're playing with a group of people that you trust, the camaraderie and friendships that you can develop, the teamwork that goes on, you're working together with other people. You're not.
So, as Pastor Brian is saying this, think about your group. People, think about your youth group. As Pastor Brian is saying.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Continue.
I'm like, I really saw this is a good team building exercise. I mean, it's like, how even companies will send employees to an escape room or something, as a team building exercise, or they'll do an obstacle course or whatnot. And I'm like, this is a great team building exercise. I mean, you are having to work together, come up with ideas, discuss things, figure things out. It's also the story that we were playing was a mystery. You're kind of trying to figure out this curse, and why this curse has happened, and trying to get to the bottom of it. So you're in this investigative journey, encountering obstacles along the way. How do you deal with that? So I was sold on the team building and aspects of the game right away. And you build good friendships and relationships. All the guys that were in our group, wonderful guys, and enjoy getting to know all of them. And then also the creative, I don't know how to categorize this, but you get to kind of be a kid again, in a sense, and explore your creativity and explore your imagination.
Leap into the fray with your Warhammer. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that didn't go well a couple times. But I was it's like, this is a
charging cleric. That's what you were.
Just so you know, there was a particular battle, for those of you who don't know, that was you can go
I think twice.
A couple times where it's like, oh, this, I don't want to stand in the background here. I want to leap in. And so, yeah, that did not go well for me. My teammates had to carry me back and recess at one point here. But it was fun just to kind of explore that. Whereas when you're playing games off the shelf or whatnot, there's not as much creative range to them, because you're
like board games, you mean?
Yeah, like a board game or whatever, or even a video game. They're getting a little bit better, especially with the RPG games, but
you're just clicking and following the scripts,
Yeah, you're following a script that someone else has written, whereas here the script is almost like it paints a canvas for you,
and you're painting with it.
You're painting along with it, and so it's like a collaborative thing. It's a really good way to look at it. It's a collaborative thing between the player, the game master, the other players, and then the company that made the game in the first place. But they don't hold your hand through it. They don't tell you, go here, go there, do this, do that. It's like,
well, yeah, the newer stuff they're starting to. I agree with that, but the older stuff is they literally, it's like a map of different locations, and and there's an end boss. But how they all play it out, what they do in that is, good or bad, is up to us, the GM or the game master and the players. So
now I've talked with another.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And also the main thing about role playing games is that the game master can create the world himself. He doesn't even need to buy the stories or anything. He can create his own field for the players to. In a D&D game or any other role. It's not like I have to use the gods and the witches and the wizards of that D&D. I can create,
So I guess
whatever.
The best way to describe it is with traditional D&D/RPG, there is a wide latitude of creative freedom that you can just explore and enjoy.
It's not even wide; it's completely open.
Yeah, complete open-ended. And that is very. It's also, I guess, a third benefit. This kind of leads to that. I said the first benefit's the meeting the other people, camaraderie, the teamwork, and all that. Second benefit is the creative freedom and the ability to kind of be a child again, almost. But the third thing is, it can be stress relief. It's actually it's good recreational enjoyment. Where it's like you're because as a pastor, I get consumed oftentimes with the burdens and needs of the people in my care as a pastor and what they're going through, and it can affect me. Plus there's the day-to-day pressures of what's going on in the church, because when you're leading a church, you're basically leading a nonprofit business, and so there's those aspects to it as well. And like any other human being, I have a family and bills to pay and mortgages and all that stuff. So it's nice to just kind of take a break from all that, jump into fantasy land. And it's just, you can forget all that stuff and you really get transported. If you're committed and engaged, you get transported in your mind to this whole other world, and it's exciting, and it's fun, and it can be, I say relaxing in a real world sense, but it can be pretty, you're kind of replacing stress with other stress sometimes too, because it can get intense, but it's intense in a fun way. So,
one thing I like too is that you can actually practice your personality in an extreme way, and in a fun way. You can practice what you would say or how you'd say it, something in this persona, whatever you're playing. It's in practice, or just would I ever say this? You can now say it in this setting, just to try it out. Just to delve into your own personality, your own character, your own role playing.
Absolutely. So, I regret.
So you have a generally positive view experience of this thing.
Yeah.
You did.
I have, in terms of our group and the game that you led, I have a very positive experience, very positive rating, thumbs up all the way. I do want to say though that for anyone watching this who's not played D&D, it is very important that you get into the right group, that you get into a group of people that you trust. And I do want to say, in fairness to, I've criticized knee-jerk Christians who are just against anything that's fun or against anything that's fantasy, and I am very critical of that group. But as an important and honest concession to them, if you get into the wrong group, just as if you get into any wrong group of friends, they can lead you astray, and lead you away. And so,
no, they can't. They cannot lead you astray. You are going to lead yourself astray.
Yeah. Well, you.
that's my view.
There's an old saying that you are the sum total of the books that you read and the friends that you meet, kind of thing. So,
well, just so you know, I do medieval armored combat, and that is there's like barely any. I'm not even sure there's a Christian in there, that group of people that I'm with. I know there's Satanists. I know there was a hardcore pagans. All the woke people are in there, and I'm in there. So, but it doesn't affect me at all. And I can take it or leave it. I enjoy getting in armor and working out and fighting with the same people. And they all believe in the trans movement. They're all, on Facebook, they all argue for it and hate anyone against it. And I kind of don't really get into the arguments. I could, and I might, but I'm just waiting, just letting them eat themselves or figure that out. But again, I'm in this group and they don't affect me at all. They're not going, and they know who I am. They call, some of them call me the paladin, some of, but I'm not, it doesn't phase me. It doesn't, I am not lured. I am not, I am not going to be, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid and I'm not going to hide. Not afraid of any of this stuff. So.
Well, let me give an example that I think you can relate with. And when the Force was being introduced in Episode 4, which at the time was the first movie of the Star Wars universe, there's this scene where Ben Kenobi says, these aren't the droids you're looking for, to the stormtroopers, and they're like, these aren't the droids, and then he says, like, the Force can be, the Force can be persuasive or whatever for the weak-minded, and so there is a distinction. Not everyone is as strong-minded as you are. Not everyone is as entrenched,
belligerent, and stubborn as I.
Well, as confident in their convictions as you are. And in fact, I'm gonna make a bold statement here, and this is the danger. Jesus calls us sheep for a reason. People are sheep, and sheep follow a shepherd, and they tend to follow the strongest shepherd. And so it is important what voices we as sheep listen to. And in your case, you've got a strong connection with the chief shepherd. And so when you go and you play, do the hobbyist stuff that you do, either through D&D or the live action role playing or whatever, you're still tuned into the chief shepherd. But a lot of people are very easily influenced.
That's why I'm not a pastor.
Yeah, by their circle of friends or by their, and so they can get led astray very easily. And there's plenty of examples in the Bible of people getting led astray.
Well, I just read the King Asa, where he's one with the Lord in Chronicles, and that one always kind of got to me. He was like, I think it was Asa or something like that, before Jehoshaphat or whatever. Okay. And he was good with the Lord, and then at the very end of his life, he aligns with Syria to go to, do something, and then God's ticked off at him. I'm like, man, I'm like, what? Like, so he kind of gets punished there, and he dies. He gets killed in that battle because even though he was good with the Lord his whole life as a king, at the very end he sought Syria's alliance to help him.
Is that Josiah? Is that Josiah? No, well, Josiah.
It was, I think it was Asa or something like that.
Well, there's a few examples of that.
It's cracked me.
Josiah, godly king, then makes maybe
it's Josiah
at the end, gets in a battle that he shouldn't have gotten into, and gets an arrow to the chest. And
I think that was it. Josiah.
But there were some other kings too. I mean, that were like that. Several of them that well, let's just Solomon, King Solomon.
Oh yeah, Solomon.
No one has more wisdom than Solomon, and yet.
Well, okay, so I guess and I agree with you that some people can get swayed by other things out there.
I think a lot of people can, but go ahead.
Yeah, but so then my thing is, and I'm belligerent. I am not a pastor for a reason, or a teacher in the church. I do another role, but I look at him like, what is your problem? What is your get right with the Lord and stop your, don't do this, don't do that. It's like, you get right with the Lord and stop telling everyone else what they can. I understand that we can be led astray, but don't shut down the conversation, or don't judge. First look at yourself. Why are you closing up, or why are you afraid of things? You need to be strong and be bold and have it, be ready for the argument. But anyway, I
hear you on that.
I'm saying generalizations, but just what I
think though, when Paul, I'm trying to pull up here. I don't want to waste your time here, but
I know, but I'll know what you're talking about.
Paul talks about the meat being offered to idols and everything.
Yeah.
He does say, take care not to be a stumbling block. And for those who are weaker in the faith,
okay, yeah.
And then
I can't put my foot out once in a while.
well, I mean, it's like and the example is a lot of Christians were very much against. This is so similar. It's really almost identical to the issues that we're dealing with now. But a lot of Christians in that day, first century, in the Greco-Roman world, were very much against purchasing meat from the meat market when that meat had been offered to idols. And they were like, we can't do that. To eat this meat would be consorting with idolatry, so we need to have nothing to do with it. And Paul said, look, that these are false gods, that these gods are nothing. And so if you just go and you're buying the meat just so you can feed your family, then you're not consorting with idolatry.
You don't believe it.
Because you don't believe it. Now, if you believe in the false gods and you're going to eat that meat intentionally to support that, that's a problem. So that was his main teaching. But he does append that at the end and says, but be careful not to cause a younger brother to stumble, because they may not be strong in their faith. And they see you going to the meat market and buying this meat, and they might conclude, oh, they support idolatry. It's okay for me to support idolatry. So we do have to be careful about how our actions might influence others, because they can. We influence each other in this
world. Well, so what I don't like then is about it is that we shut down as opposed to answer that young person and tell them this. Yes, some people can use this for evil, but we need to use it for good, because they're going to find out about it one way or another. They might as well find out about it through Christians and as opposed to non-Christians. You know what I mean? Or what? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean,
in the culture, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, and I think if you had to, yes, to the what Paul was getting at is, in many cases you're not necessarily going to have the opportunity to engage that brother. They're just going to see you from afar and make an assumption. But yeah, in this day and age, I think this is why it's important for Christians to be engaged out there and like we're doing this YouTube discussion right now. I think it's important to do this, because this way we can clear up misunderstandings like that. But my point is simply that it is possible for us to cause others to stumble. People do influence one another. People do and can mislead one another. And unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion, being in ministry now, for full-time pastoral ministry for almost 16, 17 years now, people can and often are easily misled. And so that is why I do say to anyone watching this, know where you stand with the Lord, know where your walk is with the Lord, be strong in your relationship with God. And then when you make decisions about who to become friends with, where to spend time with your hobby.
Yeah, be discerning for sure.
Be discerning. That's my main point. Yeah.
Unlike me, who just runs out there.
like I did as the paladin, just charging in. So
I feel like we're being sorted these days, and
I think there's also a need for, because let's put ourselves in the position of parents. Well, both of us, we are parents, so that's not a hard stretch. And what let's take parents of younger kids. Our kids are older now, but younger kids, they want to protect their children, and I think there is importance there. It's like you don't just want to send your child off to any old D&D group, so to speak. So you want to protect your kids. That's why I think it's very important that we create alternate and safe environments for Christian families. And you're doing that. Maybe if you don't mind, take a few minutes and talk about how you're doing that. You mentioned one already that you kind of blew past, but I want to go back to. That's playing a game as a family. You can play a D&D game at the dining room table with just your own family. So tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind, and then also some of the other projects that you're working on how to create these alternate options for Christians.
Yeah, well, it's kind of organic at this point. I'm trying to feel what I should be doing, and so a couple of the YouTube play things that I do are Christians, the Rhyme of the Approximate, and then the Star Wars one. The other one is not Christian, so that was my first one. It's generally PG. It's PG-13, but some of them blaspheme on there, and I love these guys, and it is good to do that, just to have friends and not. Right. And we even, me and the founder of this game, we said we didn't want to be political. We didn't want to push anything on each other. We just wanted to play D&D. So that group, we're playing Tomb of Annihilation. Democrat activists, I think, pagan activists, I think, an agnostic, I think. The girl on it is a Christian, but again, I think I know she is. We all kind of joke around. We're all very light, so that's whatever. That's another aspect. But it's generally PG-13, but they do blaspheme once in a while. I'm like, I just kind of try to ignore it. But it's mild. But I'm trying to, or I'm just moving along and seeing what happens. But I do start seeing now that I want to make. I've created a Christian role-playing game. It's a little dark. It's a little grim. I might want to make a kiddie version, but this one is, I don't know. It's done. It's ready to go. I just need to play test it. But it is about Christian, 500 AD, the northern Italy, Christian, the church moving into the pagan world, and seeing how that happens. So I'll start playtesting, figure that out. But yeah, I think maybe the next phase too is kind of making my website or figuring out something where a Christian role-playing game group or a network or something where parents and whoever can find each other and play online or teach people how to play online, because we're kind of sparse right now. We're all dots here and there. Well, I know there's a lot of Christian role-playing gamers, but they just don't know where to go. I don't even know where to go to find them. I had to go to regular secular places to type away and find little bits of Christian.
I have a couple suggestions, but I'll throw them out to you when we finish the recording part of this, and then we'll do, just so the viewers know, if you're game, no pun intended,
do another one. Yeah, we can
do some follow-ups on this as we get closer. But I think there are ways to kind of help.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
But yeah, bottom line is, I thank you for reaching out to me. I enjoyed the experience. I think more Christians should take advantage of opportunities. And again, I played in a safe environment with people I trust, and I reckon, the main reason I had to pull back is because of time commitments. Being a pastor can be kind of busy.
Yeah.
But
don't ask a pastor, lady.
But
unless it's a one shot.
Yeah, but I do look forward to more gaming adventures with you. So